How did you get to New York City?
Yeah, I by plane. I lived in New Orleans after college. I went there right afterwards. I was a teacher. Kind of creative, artistic lifestyle was not on the horizon whatsoever. I was teaching fourth grade. I guess I was a creative teacher, and I valued creativity. I grew up playing music, and but I was like, both my parents are doers, or like helpers rather. They're both like, we're social workers in different ways.
Wow.
So I was like, this is what you're supposed to do. This is what a meaningful life has to be.
Yeah.
So I was there, and I happened to be become good friends with someone else who was there as a teacher. His name's CJ Hunt. One of the funniest, most talented performers that I've now ever met. But at the time, we were both trying to be teachers.
Yeah.
He was part of starting this is the long version of this answer.
Please.
You're like, how'd you get to New York? And I gave like such a hacky answer by plane, and then just was like, here's my life story. There's no in between. There's so he was starting a comedy theater in New Orleans, and he signed me up for classes, and I was kind of like, what? That's my time. You can't do that.
Yeah.
And then pretty much right after improv classes, I was like, damn, I love this. But I still kind of told myself the story. I was like, I'm doing this to be a better teacher, be a better communicator, like all of these things. But I was just getting deeper and deeper into comedy, and then writing. And then suddenly I was, I was doing different kind of like storytelling and speech writing and all of these different things. And then I'd started to do stand-up. So I just had like all of these things happening at once. And I really like reached a point where I was like, oh, if I'm gonna do this, like I kind of either need to like go to New York and do this, or I need to like reel it back.
Yeah.
I'm becoming a worse teacher.
Yeah.
Because I'm half my brain's over here all the time, but I'm also not fully committed to like this creativity thing. So I'm like half of what I would like to be able to do. And you can only tell kids to pursue their dreams so many times before you're like, I guess I gotta fucking pursue my dream. Can we curse here?
Of course.
Okay. I was like, yeah, I guess I gotta pursue my dream. So I came to New York, really had no plan, had no job, went from like very secure job situation to like 3 roommates, just taking whatever jobs I could get, like fully on the other side, just jumped all the way in. And here we are. Worked out. That was 10 years ago.
What do you think came online when you started taking these classes and pursuing comedy? I mean, was there some latent desire, some latent interest that you think had never really been inflamed? How do you make sense of that? Yeah,
it's a good question. I think I grew up and clearly loved comedy, but I didn't have the language for it. Like if you go back through like my childhood, every project, if they were like, you can make a video, I was like, I'm gonna make a video, science projects, I'd be like, okay, I'm a crazy doctor who knows nothing. This is like 7th grade.
Yeah.
It's like, that's just a sketch. It was, all I wanted to do, I used to do like with my friends on the weekends, we'd make like parodies of Dateline NBC where I was Stone Phillips. And every time that it would cut back to me, I had gotten just a little bit more drunk. That was the bit. This is like 7th or 8th grade. That's like not a bad...
It's really not.
It's not a bad character.
No.
That just like every time you come back to the studio, I've clearly had a little bit more to drink. Like that's not bad. But I didn't have the language to be like, oh, I want to do this. I mean, I remember I used to watch SNL, Will Ferrell, era SNL. And I just thought it was like the greatest thing I'd ever seen. I couldn't get enough of it. But I, lived in the suburbs in a place I knew no artists. I knew no creative people. I had no language for like, this is a profession that you can pursue in a noble, meaningful way. It just felt like a fun thing that other people get to do.
Yeah.
So then I think once I finally started to, when I started with improv, it like awoke this part of me that had like always kind of been doing this for my whole life, but it gave me a structured way to do this and gave me other people that wanted to do it at the same time. And, I grew up playing music and I grew up playing basketball. So it was like the team element was very safe to me.
Yeah.
It was like it wasn't until later that I would like try stand up, but it was like, oh, I know how to be on a team. I know how to like play a role. I know how to communicate. I know how if somebody else is hot, it's their game, you know, like it's like basketball. So I had the framework for this. And I think it just tapped into it right away.
Where are you from?
I grew up in Colorado.
Colorado.
Yeah. I grew up in kind of like halfway between Denver and Colorado Springs.
You said both of your parents were social workers.
Yeah.
Was that their perspective too? That, I mean, God bless the people who do that.
Yeah.
That is the path towards, I think you just alluded to this earlier.
Yeah.
Towards a meaningful life, to give, to be involved in social work or some sort of giving profession versus the arts.
I think that was the unspoken thing. I don't think they ever said that explicitly. But I think, they were very supportive of the things that I wanted to do. But I think the uncertainty of the artistic life is, I think, what made them nervous. I think that like once I started to get things moving, I think they were like, they've always been supportive of it, but I think that there was always a sort of like, I guess we'll see where this phase of your life goes. But I think the unspoken idea was like, this is the reliable path where you're able to do something that's fulfilling and good. And, my sister's a teacher as well. And so we also liked it. It's, it's not like I was becoming a teacher just because I thought I had to. It's definitely not a profession you want to choose if you think, oh, I'm just supposed to do this. It's very hard.
Yeah.
I think they similarly thought, that my mom really encouraged us to, she required us to play music growing up. It was one of those where
strong encouragement.
Yeah. So she clearly valued creativity and music and being able to read music and all these things. But I think the idea was you'll grow out of this a little bit. And then once I, came back to it, they've been supportive.
Yeah. So you said CJ Hunt starts this. It was an improv studio?
He was part of starting this improv theater in New Orleans. And we were best friends, roommates. He moved to New York right about the same time I did. We're still, collaborators and make things together. He's now a director of documentaries.
Cool.
He worked at The Daily Show. Still extremely talented, extremely funny. His last film was called The Neutral Ground. It was about because we had lived in New Orleans, and it was about the removal of Confederate monuments.
Wow!
And so he had started rolling in like 2015 at these city council hearings. About whether or not these Confederate monuments were going to get taken down. And at the time, and this is in the movie, at the time he was kind of like, this will just be like a funny sort of Daily Show thing that I can use to work for the Daily Show, like a sample.
Yeah.
But he realized, there's actually something here. And so he's kind of the only person who was rolling from 2015 to 2020 when they were being taken down overnight. So it went from being like a years-long process to something that could happen right away. And he had kind of footage of the whole thing and his growth and journey throughout that. And so I was a co-writer on that. And he's helped me with every project I've ever done. And, he's working on a new documentary now, which I'm also a co-writer on. So, so it's like a kind of a lifelong creative partnership, which I feel very fortunate. It's very funny that he was the one who was like, I think you should sign up for this. He clearly knew better than I did.
The time between when he starts this theater and you moving to New York, how much time elapsed between those 2 points?
Yeah, probably 5 years.
Okay.
5 or 6 years or so. Enough for me to go from like, somebody who's signed up for improv classes to trying to do as many improv shows as possible to joining a sketch group that's like, doing a bunch of big comedy festivals and, to like, now I'm getting paid to like write things for people. So, that's like 5 or 6 years. And then I moved to New York and focused in on stand-up and writing for, the goal was for TV, but for kind of whatever was going to come my way. Yeah. So
you said you started doing this and it was obvious to you that you loved it.
Yeah.
How did you know that? Was it just an internal sensation of you couldn't get enough? You were just so enthusiastic. What do you remember about that coming online?
Yeah. It really felt like an awakening of like a part of me that I had never treated fairly, I guess, is the heavy part.
Yeah.
Like like, I mean, anyone who's done the artist way is going to be like, yeah, that's what she talks about in the artist way. It's like, I had like this creative part of me, and I essentially like pushed it away. And then as soon as I like let that side of me out to play, I was just like a happier, more balanced person. And, I brought a skill set of someone who like knew how to be kind of type A and organized and get things done and achieve and do whatever, to like creativity. And my whole life now has kind of been like finding the right balance between those two things. But it really felt like the world just felt like it opened up to me, and I like everything felt possible suddenly. And I think it also is like, I think at the same time I was understanding what a craft is, and understanding what it, like what writing is as a craft, and teaching is a craft as well. And I think it is very like rewarding and noble to be like, I'm going to devote myself to something for my whole life and have a relationship over decades to something. And so I think while I was kind of thinking about that in teaching, I'm suddenly discovering something else and being like, what if this was my craft? What if, teaching morphed into comedy, morphed into like writing? And it's all communication. And, I think that's the thing, is it's like, it sometimes sounds like when I describe things that I've done in my career, which are like they're varied across like a very strange spectrum. Like they all fall underneath the like umbrella of like good communication. Like, what does it mean to like convey an idea quickly, get people on board with an idea, whether that's like the social studies lessons to 10-year-old, or like a setup to a punchline, or, like a 2-hour documentary. So it's all the same.
Yeah.
I guess. So
was there a type of creative work or comedy? You mentioned stand-up, you mentioned improv, you mentioned writing, that you found the most enjoyable for you? Were they all equally of interest when you started really flexing those muscles?
I mean, I think improv originally was the thing that I couldn't believe it was real.
Yeah.
Which is, what people say about cults as well. So I loved it. But I had enough of kind of a practicality to realize like, this isn't going to be a career path for me. And like, it's not going to pay the bills necessarily. And so I, at some point, started to think about what that was. And I started to do some stand-up. I enjoyed stand-up. And I moved into writing. And now I think it's like, I love writing. I consider myself a writer. I've written for TV. I've written for documentaries. I've written for, the Olympics, or NBC sports coverage of the Olympics. And so now I guess the answer now would be like writing for like the human voice. But I think it all started with like improv and the sort of like freedom of like ideas and acceptance of those ideas. So
I don't know how much you remember about the moment, or the weeks and months leading up to the decision to actually jump to New York. I'd love to hear about that decision. It's because that must have been one of the more pivotal decisions you've made in your life. Yeah.
I think I made I think it's one of the biggest decisions I've ever made. I think I made it in almost the most cowardly way possible. I like, at the time I was dating somebody, and, she sat me down. Well, I was like, I'm going to go to New York, and I'm going to do a month worth of shows. I'm going to just go be in New York for a month. I traveled up here for shows a few times and just only ate shit, exclusively ate shit. And there was something where I was like, I got to crack this nut. Like the comics here are so good. And so I was like, I'm going to go to New York for a month, and I'm going to do as much stand-up as possible. And I think somewhere in my brain, I knew that I was moving. Like this was a soft move,
Yeah.
But the person I was dating at the time, she was like, really like, I think you got to actually go all in on this thing. And I just wasn't ready to admit that that's what I was doing.
Yeah.
I came to New York. I'd been here for, 3 out of the 4 weeks. and I like start looking for apartments. And even at this point, I'm like, I don't think I'm moving here. I'm like looking at apartments. I find one, sign a lease on one, and I'm still like, maybe, like I have a home here now. And I still, in my mind, haven't committed to this thing. I didn't have a going away party in New Orleans. Like I'd lived there for a decade, like I had all these friends. I just kind of like slipped out the back door and came to New York and was like, I'll go back soon. And it's like, I didn't, I don't know if I actually thought I was going to, but I also think I kind of needed to. I think it was scary enough that I needed to like emotionally be like, I'm gonna go back. Don't worry. Don't
have
worry.
a lifeline.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So even though I was here and I was all in effectively, emotionally, I had given myself this sort of like out, and it wasn't probably until I broke up with that person that I was like, okay, shit. Well, you don't got a home to go back to now. So then I was all in, but at that point, it's like the wheels were moving. I was like, I was waiting tables at that point. I'd like had 4 jobs because I just was saying yes to wherever I could get money, and then just trying to do as much stand up as possible. Knowing that, the goal eventually would be to write for TV.
You said, I think you mentioned earlier that you didn't really have a plan when you got here.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear about what you remember about the work that you did get to pay the bills and what you started to do to create opportunities for yourself.
Yeah. I knew that like writing was going to be the thing. Like, and so stand up felt like a good way to demonstrate that I knew how to write.
Yeah.
That I could write good jokes. I knew, like how that worked. So I came here and just, applied for as many jobs as I could. And then they just started saying yes all at once, which I think is how it works. It's like you can't get work, and then all of a sudden you have too many jobs.
Yeah.
And so suddenly I was waiting tables in Williamsburg at a brunch restaurant and working at the Whole Foods in Union Square, which is not a job I recommend. It's really Whole Foods hard enough as it is, but when it's like only tourists, rough. And I was, what else was I doing? I did like a little bit of tutoring, and then I started working for this storytelling project. Which inconveniently was based in New Orleans. So I had just moved to New York, but most of their gigs were like out, doing like, video shoots and meeting with different groups of people and things like that. So I was just kind of like, a kind of story producer for them. And it was like a very amorphous job, but it was a chance for me to, get paid to write. So I really was just saying yes to every single thing, knowing that like, I needed to kind of get reps at writing and reps at like writing in other people's voice. So, as a lot of people say, it's like, I started to like get packets for TV shows, the submission packets and, get them through like back doors. I didn't have an agent, didn't have a manager, just kind of hear that they were happening. And
what does that mean, a packet?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, I mean, this is really changing because there's so few television opportunities now, but it was like writing for TV for a long time, and still on some shows, it's like for late night TV, a late night show. Saturday Night Live has this, a lot of Chris Gethard's show would put these, they would essentially be like, here is a packet that we would like you to prepare that is essentially writing a sample that is for our show. So it is, when people do a packet for SNL, you're writing 3 to 5 sketches that should be air ready or close to being on air for SNL. And they will, for SNL, they'll be like, you're going to write 1 commercial parody. You're going to write 1 sort of like in the news, pop culture, political style, and then 1 that can be whatever you want. And then if you have others you'd like to submit, go for it. If you're writing, for a long time with Colbert, or, it's like, write a page of, topical jokes, write some sketch ideas, and so this is really like learning how to write in other people's voice. and it's a fool's errand, like at that point as well, because I don't really know what I'm doing. There's no way I'm actually competitive with some of these people out there, but I'm, putting myself out there, and I'm like also, sitting down and watching a bunch of this stuff and being like, oh, how do these jokes work? How is, Jimmy Kimmel approaching jokes compared to Stephen Colbert, compared to, a new show that True TV is going to put out that I'm like trying to write for, or John Oliver or things like that. And so I was just doing as many of these things as I could. And the one I liked doing the best was John Oliver, Last Week Tonight. I loved it. It was definitely the best packet that I did when I first moved here. It was like a ton of research. You have to be really thoughtful. You can be really creative, but it's all very like smart research, in a way. And unfortunately, you have to, that's an invite only packet. So I'd heard about it, did all the work, sent it, and they sent it back promptly. And they were just like, I'm so sorry. Like, we only ask people, like we can't just have thousands of randos sending this stuff in here. So I just did packets for years. And so then in 2019, a packet came out for Vice News, which was, the cool news.
Oh yeah.
And, not Vice, like, we tried 10 strands of weed at once, Vice, but like the news side of this,
for sure.
Like the YouTube, kind of like longer style news and a lot of like good explainers and stuff like that. And they were looking for a show writer, and they had a packet. And so they're, people from like the New York Times and the New Yorker are all applying. And I knew someone there. And so I applied, and I had been preparing for this like for years, and most of these other people had not. So like I knew how to do a packet. Like I was ready,
What
so
did you learn? What did you learn? How did you present it? What was your advantage in information?
I mean, I think that it's a really good question. I don't know if I've ever like thought about putting it like into words. I mean, number one, I think like I knew how to write for the written voice. And I think like a lot of times when people are writing for the quote unquote news, they're doing an impression of the news. They're doing the thing that you think the news sounds like. And we all have that. You can hear the news voice in your head. It's like the local broadcasty, no person speaks this way, where you're like, I'm on site here, thanks for sending it out here. I'm outside the hospital where, they use words that nobody uses. And it's really, and I knew how to not do that. I knew like with stand up and with writing for so many other people's packets, I knew how to be like, I know how to convey information quickly, punchy. I can like build in the tiniest little jokes. And also like, I don't even know if I'm making sense right now, but like, comedy is a superpower in almost every other industry because it's just good communication. Like it's just like building tension, releasing tension. So even if you're not making an actual outright punchline, the idea that you can like present an idea and then twist into a different idea that somebody else wasn't thinking is in every other industry. They're like, how did you do that? And you're like, I know a bunch of weirdos in a basement who are doing this probably right now, like they're trying to do this like 8 or 9 times a night, so, yeah. And teaching's the same way. It's like, you're thinking about how do I make this like really boring topic accessible and catchy. And so that's all that like Vice News wanted is like people who could do those things. So, I submitted a packet, and God bless my boss, Adrienne Quinlan, who was, the head show writer at Vice News. She really fairly did her packets. She like blind read them because most of the time it's like, yeah, you do all this packet, but that like the friend of the head writer is going to actually get the opportunity, or, or they're going to see a big name of somebody who's huge on Twitter or now on TikTok or whatever. But she was like, I'm going to actually read these blind and invite in my favorite ones. So I got a shot that way. I think like, yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. yeah, so I moved into Vice News, and I think that was like such a good fit for me because it was like, I think in comedy I always felt like I was like a little too serious in some ways. Like I was like, I wanted to talk about like really serious things, which I now know good comedians can do, you know, but I was just kind of like self-conscious about it. And then when I would go and work on these other writing things that were really serious, like the storytelling project that I was telling you about, I was like, I think I'm like a little too silly for this. Like I felt somewhere in between. And it was awesome to find a job opportunity where they were like, oh, we would like all of you. Like all of this is good. Would you like to be funny? Great, right? Comedic explainers. You can, you know, be the front of them. So like suddenly I was like on TV with comedic explainers that I had like written, you know, and later that day I'd be writing about like a famine or a war, you know, and then after that I would write about like a really interesting new like tech concept. It's like I got to just do anything that I was curious about.
So the packet was for a full-time opportunity. You were basically applying for a position, and once you got hired, you know, that was going to be your life full-time?
Yeah. Yeah, I think with writing, I think this is like a good thing for, you know, young writers to be thinking about is it's like most of the time to get hired, they need to know that you're going to be able to do what they need you to do specifically. And if it's a very specific job, like they're probably going to ask you to do a work sample. Like hopefully they pay you at least a little bit.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's kind of stolen labor.
Yeah.
But most places won't pay you. And they kind of need to know, I need to do this exactly. And so you have to be really good at assessing what is the voice of this show? How much research do I need to do? How can I move quickly? You know, like you're giving them a work sample that is highly specific to their show. So it's, you know, your resume can only really take you so far.
Yeah.
You know,
did that feel like a perfect fit for you?
It did. Yeah. And I think it like opened up kind of a whole world of opportunities for me. Cause it was, you know, I think like, I think of myself as like a very curious person, and it was really like, I could just be as curious as I wanted. And my job there was like, you know, I could pitch my own ideas. But a lot of what it was, you know, there'd be these field teams that would go out and get a bunch of footage somewhere out in the world. And then they would bring the footage back to me, and I would help them turn it into a cohesive story. Yeah. That then had like voiceover and information that sounded like a real person. So I was in many ways kind of like a story producer, and then like a voiceover writer. And this was just like an amazing job.
What were your favorite stories?
Wow. I mean, I did so many to this day. I mean, I stopped working there a couple of years ago, and to this day, I have to always fight going, I did a story on this one time. Where like, you know, I think, I did, I mean, my favorites were the ones that I pitched and got to do. And a lot of those were, you know, not out in the field necessarily, but, you know, I would get to talk about book bans and then do like a short explainer about what this was and why this was a problem. And so then, you know, from there, I'm like thinking, get to use my teacher brain, you know, and things like that. But some of the best pieces that I did and like kind of most interesting, I contributed to a piece that was about bank heists in Lebanon. That was like you know, I didn't do any of the hard work. This was, you know, because it was like the film crew was out there, and there was such high inflation in Lebanon at the time that they, you know, the banks were not letting people access their own money. And so people were robbing banks and holding up a bank just to get their own money back. And so one of the correspondents like happened to be with one of these people and happened to go on one of these. And so it was like, you know, I only contributed to this in terms of like kind of writing the voiceover and doing some of the back research and things, but it was like to be part of some of this stuff that was so unique and so like important and powerful for the people who, you know, were featured on screen was amazing. You know, I also did like a piece about like ballroom culture, like kind of the dance form, like ballroom culture in China.
Wow.
And like, so I knew a guy who had gone there and like had been part of this and was part of like the various kind of like houses is what they're called, which is like the groups, you know, that are preparing for the big show, and everyone kind of has their like persona that they're preparing. So he like followed them for weeks and then went to the actual show. And so I was working with him. So it was like every day I got to kind of do a crash course into something different. I feel like I'm all over the place right now, but
dude.
I also like, in terms of giving explanations, but that job also was all over the place. It was like, you know, you got to do a lot of different stuff.
You said you were there until a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
How did that job wind down?
I mean, Vice imploded.
Yeah.
So
they went bankrupt. What exactly happened?
So, okay. I mean, on my side, it was like there were just waves of layoffs. So I was one of those waves, and like pretty much everyone I know was laid off in one way or another. And you know, Vice and Vice News still exists now, but it's a shell of itself. It's pretty much Shane Smith, one of the founders, just like making poorly thought through YouTube videos now. You know, it's like so it essentially, a bunch of people got laid off, they filed for bankruptcy, and now, you know, they still do stuff, but it's mostly with contractors and things like that. So
they were booming at one time, weren't they? I mean, I remember the heyday of everybody was watching Vice News, at least in a certain demographic of this country, for a couple years, a few years. I forget how long. Yeah,
probably. I mean, probably a surprisingly long amount of time. I think if we were to look back, because this was like in the early 2010s, it just exploded.
Yeah,
and it was part of that like era of the internet.
Yes,
that felt really exciting.
Yes.
You know, this was like BuzzFeed was growing and Huffington Post, and you know, it was like this new brand of journalism that felt like it was really challenging what journalism was, and sometimes in like really dumb ways, you know, like listicles and whatever, but it like also in ways that was like, you know, like, well, let's actually go to here. And we don't, you know, some of the rules of journalism are really stodgy and rigid and don't actually speak to people. So it was like Vice was at the front of that. Yeah. And there was just like, you know, I think it really kind of peaked probably in like 2016, you know, like YouTube was, you know, peaking as well. And because Vice News in particular had kind of been at the front of like subcultures, particularly like white supremacy, sort of like covering white supremacists, essentially, Charlottesville, that like they were doing coverage that other people were not. So it was like, it was huge, just millions of followers on YouTube. Yeah. They had an amazing show on HBO. And then for a number of reasons, that just became like a untenable business model. I mean, I think that they had a valuation of just like many billions of dollars. Like,
seriously,
at one point, I'm pretty sure it was like, we'd have to look up what it actually was, but like many billions was its valuation, which is not what it was worth. So of course, at some point, those investors are like, you got to pay us back, you know? And so I think at some point it just became your natural sort of like, no one actually thought this business model through. Everything's changing online to like be social media and vertical videos and like how do you monetize those, and everything's short form. And so it's like, even when they're doing these great, you know, sort of investigations, somebody's just making that on TikTok where they're summarizing it. And so they're trying to figure that out. And there was amazing stuff happening there, but like the decision makers and the people at the top were just always kind of behind the curve in a way, and kind of out of touch. So they just had to like, you know, cull over and over and over until there really wasn't much left.
In retrospect, do you think they weren't adapting to the new algorithms to continue the growth that they had experienced in the early 2010s? Is that fundamentally the problem?
I think if you'd asked me at the time, that's what I would have said. And I think now what I realize is like 3 companies own all of media now. So I'm not sure what else they maybe could have done. Now looking, I think that it's like things were heading in a direction where they probably weren't going to be powerful enough anyway. And they were making like, they were looking into like pretty shady side deals often in a way that like making deals with the Saudi government and things like this, which is like, I don't know if you know much about their history with journalists, but
not great.
Yeah. Journalists aren't going to be excited about that partnership. But that's where they thought the money was going to be. And they were like, so it was just a lot of questionable sort of things. So they definitely weren't adapting to what it meant to like reach young people where they were at, so at the time I was just like, y'all don't know what you're doing. You're behind the curve. Like, it is crazy that like media businesses have the same metrics of success as like my stand-up friends do. They're like, how many people watched this thing? How many people clicked on this thing? How many likes do we have? Shares? It's like, it is crazy that like people who are reporting on a war or, are like measuring success the same way that my friend who's like telling a dumb, dirty joke is, but hearing that at the time, I was like, nobody knows what they're doing, and so, yeah.
Could you feel it was a sinking ship when you were there?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I got in there just kind of at the end of like, we got to do really cool work, but like almost immediately people would start to get laid off in small ways, but everyone was kind of like, let's do what we can while we can. This is who knows how long this will last. The HBO show got moved to be on Vice TV, which Vice TV mostly became like shows that were in syndication. So it was like, they weren't marketing this really good show that was winning so many awards. It's just like every like news, award out there with like, they were just racking up Emmy after Emmy, like, numerous Emmys being won, Peabody's and, DuPont awards and all, like all of these awards are being won, but for a show that is just like buried between 10 episodes of It's Always Sunny on Philadelphia and 20 episodes of Hoarders. And it's like, who's watching this? Yeah. And there was no kind of marketing campaign or anything like that. So
you leave, and what do you do? I mean, how did you think about what you wanted to do with your life and career at that point? I mean, by that point, that you'd had 5 years experience at Vice, something like that?
A little short. Yeah. Maybe 3+, a little short of 4. So at that time I'd started to work with CJ Hunt on a movie, and we put that movie out, debuted at Tribeca, and then showed on POV on PBS, and had a nice little run there. It was executive produced by Roy Wood Jr., who's a great comedian. He was on the Daily Show, and it was nominated for an Emmy and nominated for a Critics' Choice Award. It did very well, and I think that was great for CJ, great for his crew, but I think also for me was kind of between that and like Vice kind of going down in flames was a lesson to me where I was like, I only want to work on, I was kind of like, I'm just going to do freelance writing stuff, help people on different projects, but I'm only going to go all in when it's my project or it's something that I'm like really excited about, or that's, going to pay me a lot. And so, I would piece together kind of freelance things, and then certain opportunities would present themselves where I was like, this is cool. This is exciting. That's how I started working for NBC Sports coverage of the Olympics, where this I'd seen that they were looking for writers, and I got in contact and, submitted some things, some work samples. And every 2 years I work for them. It's just like, it's like sports writing camp. You just write every day for the Olympics, writing coverage. So I was like, this is cool. And I like that I only do this, like I can go all the way in, give everything, and then go back and work on my own project, go back and work on a movie with CJ, go and do stand-up, things like that. So, and when I say I write for the Olympics, I know that's confusing. So I write for NBC Sports coverage of the Olympics. So when you're watching NBC for any part of the Olympics, and they come back to the studio and there's somebody who's like, you were just watching lacrosse. That's not an Olympic sport. I literally named one of the only thing that's not an Olympic sport. They're like, that was rugby. You just watched, and here's what you need to know from that. And here's like a medal count. So in the studio, they're doing the summary and they're like, and now we're going to get you back out there for swimming.
Yeah.
I'm writing for those people. So those people, who would like are in the studio, they have writers, and not the people who are doing the live calls of the events. Those people don't have writers. That is one of the questions I get all the time. They're just very good at what they do, and they usually have a researcher who's like handing them information. So it's like when you're watching the World Cup right now, I would be willing to bet that those people probably have a researcher and have someone in their ear who's like, this is the first time this has happened in, how 6 World Cups or whatever. But other than that, they're just like talking, they're riffing. But when it goes back to the studio, the main point person who's like, this is what just happened, probably is like reading off a teleprompter and then throwing it to the people she's interviewing. So I write for those people.
So at this point, when you're getting opportunities to write for NBC Sports, for the Olympics, for other opportunities, how much this is within the last few years, it sounds like, how much is money factoring into your day-to-day thinking, your decision-making about work? I always like to get this perspective because that's just the reality of living in a place like New York City. Were you at a place where you didn't have to think quite as diligently and consistently about how much you were getting paid, or was that always in the back of your mind or the forefront of your mind?
I mean, my answer to how much I think about money is not enough. When I got laid off from Vice, I was fortunate enough that I was one of the earlier rounds of that. And I say I was fortunate is because I got severance pay before they filed for bankruptcy. Okay. So there were like 6 months or 4 months, or I don't remember how long it was, where I was getting paid, but not working.
Right.
And I used that time to actually record my first stand-up album. So I knew that I was going to lose money on this. And so I toured around and, essentially like put together a tour that was like not like necessarily going to clubs or whatever. I was like, I just need to run this as many times as possible. And I'm going to record this at Union Hall in Brooklyn. And I was working with a record label. So I like knew that the recording itself was going to be high quality and good. And I just was like, I need to just run this hour as many times as possible. So in that regard, at that time, I didn't have to think about money. I just was like, I'm going to work on my project. I'm going to do this thing. I'll sort this out once I'm done. So I recorded that and then pretty quickly was like, all right, I got to start thinking about money. And I have like a couple of freelance like clients, I've like, I like help this Brazilian journalist a lot where I'll like write some of her scripts because she'll be writing in English, which is a second language. So then I'll like help her on some of these scripts. Or, sometimes like a tech company will hire me to like write an explainer for them or, so I'll piece this stuff together. That's where I get a lot of the money. And I think I do that kind of on purpose because like I want to have space to work on my own things. And those things currently make very little money. And the paydays when they come for those are nice. But so I try to give myself room to, freelancing can be challenging, but when you also can set it up where you have repeat clients and you get paid a decent like hourly wage or whatever, that can give me space then to work on my own things, which right now is a show called Posters. It's a basketball show. It's mostly on YouTube, but you can listen to it as an audio podcast. But it's like essentially if John Oliver did sports, but it's specifically about professional basketball, NBA, WNBA. So we do like a deep dive on a player, a new player each episode. So it's comedic. It kind of brings together everything that I've told you about. So it's, I'm writing jokes, I'm doing a bunch of research into this person. So I'm telling long form stories, and getting to also talk about sports, which I do, for Olympics. So it's kind of being like, I want to make my own corner where I'm doing something that is only I can do. And so I try to everything around money is essentially being like, I want to be a good partner to my wife, like, that's the most important thing to me. So like, I want to make sure I have enough money to be able to do that. And I want to make sure I'm like have enough money to do the things I care about. But I need space to kind of work within not needing to make money on posters is what the show is called. So.
This show about NBA players, these are real NBA players that you profile, that you make these segments about?
Yeah.
I'd love to hear about, I love the NBA too. I've been a huge basketball fan my whole life. What are the most interesting stories you've put together for that show in your mind?
Yeah. So we put out the first season last year. It was 5 players. We called it the starting lineup, or, like the starting 5. And part of that was just to see, like, is anybody interested in this? So it was 5 different players. And my 2 favorite episodes, one was Lisa Leslie, the WNBA player.
Yeah.
But my favorite episode was Dikembe Mutombo.
Really?
So, and part of that's because I grew up in Colorado. So it's like I was getting into basketball at the time that he was playing for the Nuggets. But it was also because like that episode was really about like, how does an athlete become bigger than their sport, and in funny pop culture ways, like his finger wag, but also in like humanitarian ways. And so for me looking into that, it was like learning how big one player's kind of influence can be and trying to tie that all together. So like learning that like when Denver in the 90s was planning its like kind of to remake its footprint, its downtown footprint, what people in Denver now know as like Lower Denver, all of the sports teams were thinking about how they were part of this as well. And the Nuggets was one of those. So they were making plans to make their new arena, which is now Ball Arena, previously the Pepsi Center. And they were thinking about it with like Dikembe Mutombo in mind. He was the cornerstone of that team. They let him go, which is a different story. But like at the time, they were like, for us to be competitive in a small market, we need to build around him, and we need to be part of this like city remaking its footprint. So like Dikembe Mutombo is like part of city planning, at the same time as he's part of like insurance commercials, and at the same time he's like a very good basketball player and is also like opening hospitals in his home country. So it was like, that was such a fun episode. And to be like, how do you make this fun and like move quickly and feel like personal and things like that. And so like, we made that. It was like such a long episode, probably 55 minutes. But then cutting some of those stories and putting them online, they've done very well because they really resonate. So my favorite story and the clip on Instagram that did the best was about his first breakout game at Georgetown when he went, because he had, shown up to Georgetown to be a medical student. And
where's he from? He's from Africa, right?
Yeah, he's from Congo.
Okay.
Democratic Republic of Congo. And he had shown up and he'd played a little bit of basketball. He started playing basketball when he was like 16. But he's 7'2".
Right.
He's huge. And he's athletic. He showed up to go to medical school, and he went to Georgetown because they had a family member who lived in Washington, D.C. And so he's there, and somebody had mentioned to the Georgetown coach, John Thompson, that like, a huge guy is about to be here, but as John Thompson at Georgetown, as John Thompson said, he was like, yeah, we get letters from people all the time. And at that point it was like, pictures, you could make somebody look huge if you know how perspective works with a camera. It's like, I'm not going to believe a picture just because they sent it. But then he's like, okay, this guy is huge. And he convinces him to essentially just like be a practice player. I mean, he's on the bench, he's part of the team, but he's really there because Alonzo Mourning, like one of the top recruits in the country, is his actual starting center. And so at practice, Dikembe Mutombo is supposed to just like block shots, grab rebounds, make life hard for Alonzo Mourning. That's what he's supposed to do. And then there's this game against St. John's where Alonzo Mourning gets in foul trouble, and John Thompson turns to Dikembe Mutombo and he's just like, you don't need to score. All you need to do is go block shots and rebounds just like you do against Alonzo Mourning in practice. And so he goes out there and he blocks 12 shots in like one game, and it blows people's minds. And so we found the archival of this game.
Wow.
And it's so fun to listen to because just over and over, they're like, who is this guy? Like, and so finding that and kind of tracing it back to the sort of just like how someone who becomes one of the most significant athletes in the world, like ever, you know, just in terms of like actual influence and the spread of basketball and all of these things, it kind of just happened just because he was ready. You know, like he just was like, he just stepped up to the moment, you know, is like a fun story. And like, that's what we're trying to find. It's like, we're trying to find sports stories, all professional basketball, but like the idea around, you know, basketball lives at the cross section of culture. It lives at the cross section of history in a way that I like care about.
Yeah.
So
fascinating, dude.
Yeah.
The opportunities that have come to you post Vice, are you mostly going after them? Are they coming to you at this point? I'd love to hear about if this is outbound, inbound, both. Like how do the freelance opportunities that you end up taking, again, to preserve time to create your own stuff, how do they get sourced at this point?
Yeah. It's a tricky answer because it's always kind of changing, but I mean, I think it's a little bit of both. I think once you get someone who, like a client or freelance, you know, person who really trusts you, they're probably going to recommend you to somebody else. Yeah. And that's going to open up a bunch of other opportunities. So part of it is just like getting a reputation. Yeah. You know, for someone who's like trying to get into writing, that's not particularly helpful, because it's like, you have to get that opportunity first. I think like the thing that I tell like people who are, you know, wanting to get into writing, wanting to get that opportunity is like, you have to have work samples. And even if that's you just like pretending to do something, even if that's you being like, you know, call it like a spec script. I pretended that I wrote for this TV show, or just having something that shows that you can write. And that sounds annoying, but the goal of that is other people want to be your champion. Like other people want to root for you. Yeah. Your friends, your family members, collaborators. It's like once somebody sees that you're awesome, they want to go recommend you. Yeah. But they have to have something to show. Yeah. They can't just be like, I promise they're cool. Like, yeah, a lot of people are cool. A lot of people are fun to work with. And that's a huge part of it. But like they need something to take into the room where they're like, look at this video that they made. Look at this explainer that they made, you know, or they need something to take. So a lot of it is like just building a network of people over years and years, but giving them tools. Like have a website. That's like one of the simplest things. Have a website where you describe yourself, you link out to your social media things, and like put 2 work samples. It's like, that goes such a long way. Like I'm surprised by how many people are like, I was reading your website and I saw this thing, and I'm like, really? I thought I was just giving Squarespace money. Like I didn't know, you know, like. But the other thing, and this has just come with time, is like now I have an agent, and that came after Vice. And now I can say things like the Olympics where I saw that they were hiring. I can be like, hey, I think I'd be great for this. Can you get me in the room? You know, like an agent can't get the job for you, but they can help you get in the room. And that's always the hardest part, is just getting there. And so, so now it's a little bit of me being like, let's go. Can you get this for me? Yeah. So it's a mix of those 2 things. I still think percentage wise, and like what's more helpful for most people in the world is like just kind of making your own opportunities, putting yourself out there, which is always annoying to hear. Yeah. Yeah. I guess one thing that is helpful to think about, and part of why I like think I got Vice and was ready for that submission packet, like we were talking about, is the year before that, I decided that I was going to collect rejections. So I was like, I'm going to collect as many rejections as possible. Because up to that point, every time I submitted for a show, every time I submitted for a stand-up, like to be on a stand-up show, or sent in a submission packet for a television show or anything of the sort, or tried to get in a comedy festival, it was crushing. because I thought that success was getting accepted. And statistically, even the best people are getting accepted a tiny percentage of the time. And so I was just crushed all the time. And so I read a couple things where people had done something similar. And I was essentially like, I was like collecting times that I got a no. And I put it on my wall. I would put a sticky note on my wall. And I was like, I'm going to get as many of these in a year. Because if you get picked for something, that's already rewarding. Yeah. You don't need to put that on your wall. Yeah. You got picked, but to be like, sweet, you did it again, turn to this thing that's a no into being like, good job putting yourself out there. You get a sticker. Yeah. You get a sticker on the wall.
You're taking shots on goal.
Yeah, exactly. And then celebrating it, making it fun for myself to be like, how many times can I do this? And so that I think is part of it. And now when you're thinking about like inbound, outbound, I think I've like trained myself to just like shoot as many shots as possible. Yeah. And sort it out on the back end. It's like, if you get a yes and you have too many things, that's a good problem. Yeah, it's like, just get them out there, So
as somebody who loves writing and loves storytelling, which I do, I'd love to hear about what your favorite organizations, venues, opportunities just for fun cultural things in New York to do. When you have free time and you can go see great writing, I don't know if it's stand-up, I don't know if it's The Moth. I'd love to hear from you where you go to hear interesting, fascinating ideas being talked about live in this incredible place.
Yeah. The Moth is a great one. I've worked with The Moth in the past. It's a pretty surefire way, and particularly if people are looking to like tell stories for the first time, you can go to one of their story slams and like, great way to get stories. My favorite things are, I'm always leaning towards comedy because that's where my background is, and I still, love doing that. I like going to places like Union Hall in Brooklyn. That isn't a club, but that is run professionally. But I like going to places where people can, where they can be celebrated for doing their own thing, but they're doing it at a very high level. Yeah. It's like nobody wants to just go to any old open mic or something. That's not fun to go watch because it's such a roll of the dice. Yeah. But going to a place like Union Hall or Littlefield or a couple of these like Brooklyn venues that aren't straight up comedy clubs, not like stand-up clubs, but just a place you might see stand-up, but you're probably going to see people taking like a twist on it, or they're running a one-person show, or they're incorporating music in a way that they wouldn't be able to do at a club, or something where people are kind of making their own rules, but they're doing it at like a really high level. So for me, that's Union Hall. But I also live in South Brooklyn, so that's easy for me to get to. And I ran a show at Union Hall for years, so I'm also very biased. But like, I think that's one of the ones is like, some of those, we would call them like alt rooms. There's more alt sort of comedy rooms. It's just like for weird comedy.
Yeah, nice.
And then, I think for me, what's other good examples of places? I mean, one of the like best experiences that I have like had creatively, well, as an audience member, but like I was creatively moved, was at BAM. So Brooklyn Academy of Music. Is that right?
I think so.
Yeah. Usually they show movies, and I love going to movies there. But I went to a show there that was called 32 Sounds, and it was like a live documentary where it was like this person had captured all of the footage, but he was reading his voiceover in the room. It was being scored in the room by a musician, and everyone had their own headphones because it was about sound. And so it was like this incredibly intense, intimate experience. And it was really beautifully done, where it was like the sound design was amazing. And it was like a mix of sort of just like talking about sound and our relationship to it, but also like our, like really sound in relation to like grief and humor and all of these things. And it was unlike anything that I'd ever experienced in my life, where it was just like, first of all, just having headphones at a live show was crazy. Just because you're in a room of people, but you're having your own experience at the same time. So I think like, you know, there's so much of this happening in New York. It is hard to find. But you know, BAM's a good place to start.
Okay.
I would say.
I always close these by asking artists how they think about the word success. You've talked about your trajectory from New Orleans here and the opportunities that you've been able to get over the years. At this point in your career, how do you think about that word? What does success look like to you, mean to you?
Wow. That's a great way to end your show. Just send me out with a little existential dread. Yeah, I think like, I'm really thinking about this one. I think for me, and this is coming from a very like privileged place. If you'd asked me 10 years ago, I would have said something completely different. All I wanted was a shot. Like all I wanted was like somebody to like let me in the room, let me write on a show, let me, you know, that's all I wanted. And now I've like had those shots. And so now success, I think, feels a little bit different. And I think for me, like success now looks like really knowing myself and knowing what I'm good at and knowing what kind of moves me or like challenges me and like putting myself in situations where I'm making things that I'm like really proud of. The nature of living in New York, the nature of capitalism means that, you know, sometimes you have to do a dumb job on the side in order to do that. But like success to me is like, you know, making this basketball show where it's like, I might lose money on this, but like, I don't think other people can make this. It feels very personal to me. And that feels like what success is right now. I think that like the amount of like slop that now exists, and part of that is like AI and part of that is like people chasing the algorithms and stuff. And like, that's only going to get worse. So I think the more personal that people get now and like the more like unique and the bigger human risks that you take now that feel unique to you, the more those things are going to shine through. And so for me, I think that's just what success is. It's like, does this feel like you?
That you are uniquely capable of creating.
Yes. And, you know, sometimes, you know, you put something out and you're like, this is uniquely me, but nobody else liked it. But that's helpful too. You know, it's like, you know, if you're like, I really like this, but it's not resonating with other people, you already did half of the battle, which is you made something you like. Now you just got to figure out how to translate it. But that's, you know, that's my kind of like artsy fartsy answer. And coming from the fact that I have had opportunities that, you know, like paid me or put me in rooms that I had wanted to be in the past.
It's a great answer.
Oh, okay. Good.
Dude, thanks so much for doing this.
Yeah. I really appreciate it. Thank
Great
you
to
for
meet
having
you.
me. Yeah.